Pancreatic transplant. Going only. Till that we'll write no.
Okay. A very good evening to all of you. I hope you can see my slides.
This meeting is being recorded.
Yes, sir. The screen is visible, sir.
Okay, very good. So we are going to discuss about pancreatic and islet cell transplant. Two different things, but functionally we do it for the same reasons. Each has its pros and cons, which we will discuss. Pancreatic transplantation by itself has many types of pancreatic transplantation. So for the general surgeon examination, exit examination, I think you will get it for as a 5-mark question, or I doubt you'll get it as a 10-mark question, but we are going to discuss all the salient points, the most high yield facts that is there, and if you have any questions, I'll take it at the end of the class. So we have to know what is diabetes mellitus. Okay, so there's a type 1 diabetes mellitus. This is which is seen in young age group, 6 months to young adults. It often presents as most acute. Etiology is autoimmune. Beta cell mass loss, insulin deficiency. The prevalence is only 5 to 10%. Okay, it's important for you to know. The type 2, which is much more common, 80 to 90%. It happens in adulthood. It's basically insulin resistance. Okay, and there's few which are monogenic, 2%, which is still, it's very difficult to give a name to all these things, but it happens in sometimes in glucokinase issues and in neonatal, some things are there, which requires further investigations, but mainly we have type 1 and type 2. So just keep that in the back of your mind before the indications come. The modalities of pancreatic transplantation is mainly 3, which is called the simultaneous transplantation of pancreas and kidney. That means the operative word is simultaneous. That means in a small indication of patients who've got 2 systems which requires transplantation, it simultaneously means at one go. We do the pancreatic transplantation as well as the kidney transplantation. The second thing is that whose kidney disease is still stable or does not have kidney disease, or whose kidney disease requires transplantation, and since kidney is much more easily available than the pancreas, the kidney is done first and then the pancreas is done. That is called PAK, pancreas after kidney. The operation word over here is after. So the kidney transplantation is done first and then the pancreas transplantation is done. The third modality is PTA. This doesn't have any kidney disease, only pancreas is gone. So that is called pancreatic transplant alone. Okay, third one does not have any kind of kidney disease. So simultaneous transplantation of pancreas and kidney. So if they ask you the types, modalities of pancreatic transplant, you would say SPK, simultaneous, that means at the same time, which is, you can understand that the patient both has a pancreatic disease as well as a kidney disease. Or pancreas after kidney transplant, that means the kidney disease is worse than the pancreas. Or the kidney transplant, kidney donors are easy to get, pancreatic donors are very difficult to get, as you know. Right? So they do the kidney. They don't want to keep the patient waiting till the pancreas also comes, because the dialysis cost is also there. So they do the kidney, and then after a few months, when the pancreas is available, you do the pancreas. So pancreas after kidney. And then the patient might not have any kidney disease at all. So that is a pancreas transplant alone. So these 3 are very, very important for you to know. SPK, PAK, PTA. You should not make any mistakes with this. So I said SPK, little bit, just 2 lines of it. It's a simultaneous kidney pancreas transplantation. It's the most common type of pancreas transplant, representing 98% of all the pancreas transplants performed in the US. Currently, the best treatment alternative to patients with end-stage renal disease who are candidates to a kidney transplant. Okay, this is common. This type PAK, that is after kidney. This type of transplant is considered for those patients who are candidates for a kidney and a pancreas transplant and who have an available living kidney donor or where waiting list vintage is significantly shorter to kidney when compared to a pancreas transplant. So you can understand kidney is very easy to get. Moreover, there's 2 kidneys or living, relatives can give the first kidney. They have second kidney, but pancreas is just one. You only get from dead donors. So you can understand a lot of decision making in transplant based on availability. So this is a very good PAK, pancreas after kidney. The main benefit of pancreas after kidney is reducing or avoiding time on dialysis while waiting for the pancreas transplantation. So you can understand the patient has both kidney disease and pancreas disease. The kidney disease is on dialysis, but suddenly a kidney is available and the pancreas is not available. So you don't wait. You give the kidney, make sure he stops dialysis. It's very good for him. A lot of money is saved. And then wait gradually for the pancreas transplantation to occur. Okay, this is the main indication for PAK. The last one is pancreas transplant alone. Isolated pancreas transplantation in diabetics without documented kidney disease. So when kidney disease is not there, it's pancreas transplant. With or little or no other secondary complication would theoretically be the ideal transplant. These would be the ones who would benefit the most from the positive effects of the transplant by being able to prevent the appearance of secondary complications thanks to early metabolic control. So this we are talking about that uncontrolled diabetes which causes secondary changes like nephropathy and oculopathy and all these things. So kidney is still okay, diabetes is still is uncontrolled, but the kidney is okay. You would require a pancreas transplant for this patient. So before the secondary changes of kidney comes, you do the pancreas transplant alone. Very small, you can catch it very small, but this is one of the indications where you can do it. So what is the main difference between SPK and PAK? This is another chart I got from this pancreas transplantation by Ventura. This SPK is simultaneous transplant kidney. The advantage is that it's a single procedure, both happens at the same time. Single cycle of induction immunosuppression. That means for induction immunosuppression, you don't have to give it twice for 2 transplants. Better graft survival. The disadvantages, of course, longer waiting time because to get both organs at the same go is very, very difficult. And lower probability of receiving kidney transplant preemptively. So this is one of the disadvantages. Pancreas after kidney advantages are minimizes or avoids the need of dialysis. So dialysis goes out of the picture. You've done the kidney transplant, now waiting for the pancreas transplant. Shorter surgical procedure, avoids uremia associated complications because the kidney is well taken care of, and time to pancreas transplantation usually shorter than the SPK. Okay, so this is a good part. The disadvantage is that 2 surgical procedures, 2 cycles of induction immunosuppression, higher incidence of acute rejection, and inferior pancreas graft survival. How, why, no one knows. Okay, so you can take a screenshot of this. The difference between SPK and PAK, a 5-mark question, will require you to answer this like this. Right? I'll go on to the next one. So what are the goals of transplant? So it's the words in red is very, very important. And if you can answer something like this, it is very good. Always when you're doing a big procedure, if you're writing any operative procedures, always write these 3 lines. What are the goals of the operative treatment? What are the goals of the operation? What are the goals of the endosurgery or whatever surgery you do? It reflects very well on your examination. So restore glucose-related endogenous insulin secretion. That is the main job of a pancreatic transplantation. Let's talk about only pancreatic transplantation. Okay, this topic is about pancreatic transplantation. To restore glucose-regulated endogenous insulin secretion, to arrest the progression of the complications of the disease. Okay, we are arresting before any kind of uncontrolled diabetes. The diabetes has so many, it causes vasculitis, atherogenesis, nephropathy, oculopathy, everything. So progress the complication of diabetes and to improve the quality of life. Restore, arrest, improve. Right? So as CCC people, please write goals. Even if you are explaining an operation. So goals of the operation is this. We'll do this. It's normally given in front of when you study operations. Is in the first paragraph or the second paragraph. The goals of the treatment. It's very, very important. Very classy. So this is the American Diabetes Association ADA criteria for the indication for transplantation. Over here, we are talking about only pancreas transplantation. So SPK and PAK, I don't have to explain to you what this. The indications are patients with type 1 diabetes and end-stage kidney disease, right? Who have had or plan to have a kidney transplant. Okay, SPK and PAK. PTA, pancreas transplant alone, is generally considered only in patients with serious progressive complications of diabetes in whom the quality of life is unacceptable. What are these quality of life unacceptable? A history of frequent acute severe metabolic complications like history of hyperglycemia, recurrent marked hyperglycemia, or a history of ketoacidosis, for it was admitted. Incapacitating clinical or emotional problems with exogenous insulin therapy. Insulin therapy has a lot of issues. Consistent failure of insulin-based management to prevent acute complications. So despite insulin-based management, he's having hypoglycemia, hyperglycemia, ketoacidosis. This becomes low quality of life. So pancreatic transplant alone, right? Please note that SPK and PAK involves the kidney transplant. So this end-stage kidney along with the type 1 diabetes is important. But PTA has these three, is basically on the quality of life. Now, a little thing about the islet. Islet transplantation is an evolving technology, and that is the way you should answer. This procedure is usually performed within the context of a controlled research study. So whenever you're doing an islet cells transplantation, you should have consent from the patient saying that it's a controlled research study, right? It's an evolving technology, right? I have 4 or 5 slides on islet right at the end, so that you can answer questions and the important salient points I take, right? So I'll just remove you can take a screenshot of this. So let me just break down between SPK and PAK. What are the indications? Diabetes mellitus and end-stage renal disease defined as GFR less than 20 ml per minute or on dialysis. PAK, pancreatic after kidney transplant, diabetes mellitus and functional kidney transplant. So the kidney transplant has been done, pancreatic after kidney, but the patient has diabetes and all these issues with diabetes. PTA is type 1 diabetes with normal renal function. Obviously doesn't have any kind of kidney disease, which is defined as GFR more than 60 ml per minute or proteinuria less than 1 gram per day. And not aware of any severe hypoglycemia, life-threatening. Okay. He's not aware that he's had a hypoglycemia, which is life-threatening. Frequent hospital admission due to metabolic complications, hyperglycemia, diabetic ketoacidosis, and everything. Failure to achieve glycemic control using other alternatives such as insulin pump, continuous glycemic control monitors during a hospital admission. So the insulin is just not getting controlled in whatever you are doing. You know, as an insulin pump you are giving or a continuous glycemic monitors that you are seeing, but still the patient is going into frequent. His insulin is not getting controlled at all. Okay. So this is just the same thing only. I have just broadened it up so that you can understand. Right? Another screenshot. You can reproduce anything in your paper. So what are the absolute contraindication? As in all transplants, severe untreatable coronary heart disease, severe left ventricular dysfunction, chronic liver or pulmonary disease, active infection, active or past cancer without adequate remission period, severe psychological or psychiatric disease, drug and alcohol abuse, morbid obesity, which is more than 35, and active gastrointestinal bleeding. Absolute contraindications, more or less, it is there in all transplant, right? What are relative complications? Age less than 18, more than 55, obesity, BMI less than 30, recent acute coronary heart disease, recent retinal hemorrhage, symptomatic cerebrovascular, peripheral vascular diseases, severe autonomic neuropathy or diabetic gastropathy, and active. Okay. This acute and relative complications is almost the same. Absolute and relative complications, most transplants, right? So if you know one, you can write in all. Right. So I'm keeping pancreatic transplant, SPK, PAK, and PTA together as pancreatic transplants versus islet cell transplantation. So you have to understand this. So you can say islet cell is new. It just cells are there. You don't have to put the entire organ in. You know, it's just like an injection therapy, just something like that. So the latest evidence is this. In a report from a single center, you should always say in a report from single center, which was from 33 pancreas transplant PTA with 33 islet cell transplantation procedures, patients undergoing PTA, that is complete whole organ pancreatic transplant, had a higher insulin independence, 75 to 57% at an average of 1 year follow. So if you give the entire organ, the patient goes off insulin independence, 75% versus 57% with islet cell at 1 year follow-up. Understand this, what I'm saying. Rate of long-term adverse effects is more than 1 year. Length and frequency of hospitalization, reintervention for acute surgical or immunological complications, infections was higher in patients who received pancreatic transplantation. So obviously you can understand that our entire organ is going, hospitalization is much more, complications is much more because the transplant operation that has happened. You have to give immunotherapy obviously for this thing. Islet cell also has immunotherapy, but this also has immunotherapy. So the complications and long-term adverse effects is simply more in pancreatic transplantation. In a second retrospective study, compared 15 PTA pancreatic transplant alone versus 10 islet cell transplantation, the rate of insulin independence at 3 years, note, this was 1 year. So insulin independence at 3 years was similar. So this is not that statistically significant. 64% 70 is almost similar. It is not statistically significant. So note, one study is saying after 1 year, the patient is off insulin independence, does not require insulin, is better on pancreatic transplant rather than beta cell transplant, islet cell transplant. And a second retrospective study is that in 3 years, it's almost the same. Okay, so when you're asking, a quality answer would be exactly like that, sir. In one report in a single center, which shows that 1 year follow-up, the insulin independence of pancreatic transplant is better than islet cell. But a second study says that in 3 year follow-up, it is almost the same. 10 on 10, honors mark. Okay, right. Now, data from pancreas and islet cell transplantation registries, the third registry that is showing, shows a higher rate of insulin independence with pancreatic transplantation. Again, 85 versus 50%, which is corroborated in the first study, but also higher morbidity due to general surgery. So obviously the pancreas is exactly corroborating what the previous study was. The islet cell transplantation procedure is less invasive and therefore it is associated with lower morbidity. However, rates of long-term success defined by insulin independence are lower. Okay, so that is why it is still observational, experimental. You have to sign a consent that you're in a controlled study and everything. Right? So this is a very important thing. If you can put it in your, if it counts for 10 marks or 5 marks, if you have time, you can put in a little bit of these studies. It's very good. I'll go direct to the surgery. I'm not going to the immunotherapy part because immunotherapy is almost the same in all transplantation. So I just go to surgery, which is very, very important for you to understand. Take a look at this. This is taken from the paper from the European Society of Radiology. This is pancreatic transplantation by this Hampson. I think it is very, very good. It shows this is the study of SPK. Both are done at the same time. Okay. This, see, the pancreas is kept in the right iliac fossa. The kidney is kept in the left iliac fossa. Right? There's an anastomosis done over here. There's an anastomosis done over here. We'll get to this. This is not the defining. There's more pictures behind. Right? Note, in a pancreatic specimen, transplant specimen, we take entire pancreas along with the duodenum also. And we do a anastomosis with the enteric anastomosis with the on the rule loop or directly to the duodenum of the recipient. Okay, this is the recipient rule loop. Okay, you can do this in the bladder also. Another picture I'll show you. But I want you guys to absorb this picture. Okay, we are not going to talk about the kidney transplant, but this is the picture I want you to absorb. Okay, because this is a new thing for you. I'll explain each and every anastomosis. You don't have to worry about that. This picture will also be repeated in the next one. Okay, this is a schematic diagram of an SPK. So what is happening? First, we have to talk about an organ placement. Where do you place the organ? The kidney was transplanted to the left, as you have seen, and the pancreas to the right iliac fossa. Right? Pancreas and kidney both on the right side, with pancreas transplanted first to minimize cold ischemia time, because it's less for the pancreas. On the distal inferior vena cava, right common iliac vein, an artery, followed by the kidney transplanted more distally on the right external iliac vein and artery. See, it is not necessary you put kidney on the left, and pancreas on the right. You can put the kidney over here also. Okay. But note that the pancreas has to be proximal and the kidney has to be distal. But in your examination, in your theory, write this, right and left. Okay. Don't get into this. It can be placed over. When it's a viva thing, kind of a thing, then you answer all these things. Right? This ipsilateral technique preserves the left side for future transplantation and reduces the operative time because vascular dissection is localized on the right. So people who put both on the right side, they are leaving the left side for in case something garbar hua hai, then we have the left virgin side to put it. Okay. Also, there's only one vessel that you'll have to basically dissect to put both organs. Over this, you have to do both dissections, right and left. But the most commonly it is done, kidney on the left and pancreas on the right for SPK as well as when the question is going for PAK also. Okay. Always remember one thing when you're dealing with a pancreatic transplant, if you know the pancreatic vasculature, it is very thin. Okay. So perioperative anticoagulation is very, very important in this organ. So unlike a kidney, a pancreas is inherently low microcirculatory flow organ. So whenever there's a low flow in that organ of blood, there's huge chance of thrombosis. It's much higher in pancreas compared with the other solid organ transplant. So remember a little bit caveat that you have to give perioperative anticoagulation, right? The third issue is that where will the bowel anastomose? You can either do a bladder anastomosis or an enteric exocrine, because the pancreatic juice comes out, right? So pancreatic juice comes out through what? The papilla. And we have taken the duodenum. So that has to also go to the GI tract, right? Or it has to go some outlet to the bladder. One important surgical consideration during pancreas transplantation is the method of drainage of the pancreatic ductal, that is exocrine version, the pancreatic juice. Historically, the management of the exocrine pancreas secretion was most commonly accomplished by bladder. So previously, they used to accomplish the entire thing through bladder. Wherever the allograft duodenum is anastomosed side to side to the recipient's bladder. Pictures will be there. Don't worry about it. Right? So either remember that duodenum that comes with the pancreas, you can either put it with a bladder anastomosis, bladder duodenum anastomosis, or you can do with a duodenum root loop anastomosis or duodenum anastomosis. You can even do a duodenum stomach anastomosis. So all these things are there. However, since 1995, the preferred duct management technique has become enteric drainage with anastomosis of the donor duodenum to the recipient small bowel, either jejunum or ileum, with or without diverting ruling. So the picture that you've seen, there was a diverting ruling over there. So this duodenum can open over here in a root loop, or it can open with this directly, or this can open with this. Pictures are all there. The third important thing is about the vein. What to do with the vein, pancreatic vein. Okay, the portal was a systemic venous drainage. Venous drainage is important because venous thrombosis is the most common early technical complication of pancreatic transplantation. In addition, the method of venous drainage determines the site where insulin is initially released to circulation. So remember, insulin comes out through the vein. That is why you're doing the pancreatic transplant, right? So the vein outflow is very, very important. So there's two things over here, okay? By contrast with techniques of venous drainage that involves the recipient's splanchnic venous system, that is the superior mesenteric vein, then portal hyperinsulinemia occurs. With subsequent first pass hepatic degradation or elimination of insulin, which is more physiologic and mimics the pancreas. So basically what they are doing is that if you use the recipient superior mesenteric vein, then the superior mesenteric vein becomes the portal vein, isn't it? So that is exactly how the normal pancreas in the body works. The insulin first comes to the portal vein. So that is what you call a physiologic or the portal hyperinsulinemia. It goes to the portal vein. So despite theoretical concerns, there's sometimes what they do or metabolic studies, systemic hyperinsulinemia, when it goes to the systemic circulation with associated systemic venous drainage, has not been shown to be a risk factor for either insulin resistance or metabolic syndrome. So you can either put it to the portal vein or you can use it to put it into the systemic circulation also. But nothing happens, no different changes happen. Conversely, metabolic studies follows portal venous drainage of pancreas allograft have failed to show any consistent long-term benefit of this technique. So it's not required for you to put it into the supramesenteric vein, the venous drainage. You can put it in any systemic veins. What about the arterial anastomosis? After procurement, the dual arterial supply of the pancreas is usually reconstructed with a Y graft derived from the donor iliac artery bifurcation. Now, this is very important for you to understand. Okay, and I'll show you the pictures. The donor internal iliac or hypogastric artery is usually anastomosed end-to-end to the splenic artery, which is the donor splenic artery, and the donor external iliac artery is anastomosed end-to-end to the donor supramesenteric artery, or vice versa. Right? This is basically to give a more solid diameter for the arterial inflow. The donor Y graft is then anastomosed end-to-end, end-to-side to the recipient right common or external iliac artery. So this is the entire pancreatic specimen that comes out. I've taken it again from Stollert and Foley, right? Pancreatic cancer imaging. All comes from radiology actually. So this is the specimen that you got out. Okay. This is the SMA, SMV that you can see. This is a portal vein donor. This is a splenic vein, right? This thing that you see over here, the Y graft, this is actually taken from the donor itself. Okay, the donor common iliac and right external and left iliac. This donor common iliac, this donor internal iliac and donor external iliac. Okay, external iliac is anastomosed end-to-end with the donor SMV, and the internal iliac is anastomosed with the splenic artery. Why do they do that? They do that because then this part is anastomosed with the recipient vessel. Because these are very thin. This SMA is a big vessel, but the splenic vein sometimes is very thin. And it also supplies the pancreas, right? So what happens is something like this. Say this is what we call the Y. So this, if you can see this, completely the previous picture. Okay. What we have done is that this part of the vessel is the SMA of the donor, right? This part is the splenic of the donor. This part, right? I'll do another. This part, Y, is a donor common iliac with internal and external iliac, which has been anastomosed to make this into what you call a Tagra Y graft. And this donor common iliac artery is anastomosed to the external iliac artery of the recipient. So this Y graft is very, very important. Okay. See,
sir, that Y graft, where is it being taken from? How do we make the Y graft?
Donor. It's a dead donor, right? So what you do is that you take the entire composite with the duodenum. You take the donor common iliac with its external iliac, internal iliac. You reverse it. You anastomose first in the back table with the external iliac with the SMV and internal iliac with the splenic. And then you take the entire organ, put it into the recipient's body and anastomose that donor common iliac artery to the external iliac. Got it? See, this is also donor. This is also donor. This they have taken, they've reversed it and anastomose over here, end to end. Then they've taken the entire thing and put it inside the recipient. Then they have anastomosed this recipient external iliac to the donor common iliac.
Okay.
Got it? It's confusing. But remember this is called the Y graft. It's donor's Y graft. So what is happening is that during a transplant, when you're doing, okay, you have only one arterial anastomosis. You've already done this in the back table. Sorry. You've already done this in the back table. Okay?
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
How is duodenum surviving?
Acha, duodenum. How is duodenum going? So this is the picture for that. So you can either, this is the duodenum that is there. You see over here, can you see, appreciate the Y graft? It's even Y graft over here. This is the donor splenic. This is the donor SMA. This is the donor external iliac, common iliac, and this composite is taken with common iliac artery. Okay. Anastomosis have been done. Then this is a portal vein with the common iliac vein. Anastomosis has been done. Then the duodenum is over here. They have anastomosis with the small intestine. So exocrine secretion happens like that. You can also take the duodenum, you reverse it and put in a bladder. It can also come out from the bladder also. So this was done historically on a history map. This is done now. Important concept for you to understand is that Y graft thing. Okay. Now the duodenum can also be put near the jejunum also. The duodenum can also put sometimes in stomach also. But the most common is that duodenum is taken in small intestine. If you have any problems, you can do a rule loop also and drain the duodenum. Right? Histamine, they used to drain it to the bladder. Okay. What about the cold ischemia times for this? And we will talk about the ischemia times right at the end because there was a question raised last class. Preservation time of up to 30 hours in University of Wisconsin solution had no untoward effects on short or long-term pancreas graft survival in earlier studies. In a subsequent studies, however, preservation time exceeding 20 hours is associated with a higher risk of technical failure. Okay. Many centers target CITs of less than 12 hours, and this is the golden rule for most solid organs, given the association of longer CIT with the development of graft pancreatitis and early graft thrombosis. So whenever, and I have a slide right at the end because last time the question was raised. Whenever we're talking about these ischemia times now, if you want to answer as a super specialist, it is never a cutoff time of 12 hours or 8 hours or something like that. You'll have to answer that studies have shown after, I'm just giving you an example, don't take this as pancreas transplant. After 4 hours, these changes happen. After 8 hours, that changes are more common. But you can probably do after 12 hours because the donor is depending on the individual donor. That's the way you should answer as a super specialization. Because as you can understand, this is an extremely labor intensive and very precious transplant organ is there. And whenever you might have to travel 100 kilometers to get that, or it is coming by flight or something like that. So all these things has to be taken into consideration. So we'll have a 5-minute discussion right at the end of the class. Okay, so this is the cold ischemia time that you should understand. Okay, so 12 hours is the cutoff over here, right? But the 20 hours also can be done, and presumably 30 hours also there. But if you do for 30 hours, there's a lot of post-operative complications that will come. What are the complications? Now I've divided into pre-transplant, peri-transplant, and post-transplant because we'll not go very depth over here because as a 5 or 10 mark question will not be able to answer everything. So graft damage during organ procurement, there can be a vascular lesion, splenic artery damage, SMA damage, or portal vein damage. Duodenal lesion, okay, duodenal damage to the pancreatic capsule or the parenchyma. Okay, my God, this spelling is really bad. I don't know how it's going to. Okay, that's pre-transplant. So when you're procuring the organ, you have to be very careful. Peri-transplant is what? Acute and surgical and post-surgical complications about vascular lesion. That is, recipient has severe atherosclerosis disease, which is actually a contraindication, which you have seen, absolute contraindication, but that can happen hidden. Hemorrhage, pancreatitis, graft pancreatitis, inadequate graft perfusion, because your Y graft is not too good. Cardiovascular morbidity, which is there, is a common general complication. Post-transplant vascular complications are what? Graft thrombosis, 60% happens in venous, 40% happens in arterial. Late vascular complications, which is anastomosis, stenosis, pseudoaneurysms, arteriovenous fistulas. Vascular complication of kidney graft, okay, which are especially seen in simultaneous pancreatic kidney transplant. Then for surgery, infection of the surgical wound, incomplete healing of surgical wound, intraabdominal abscess and infections that can come. So these are the pre, peri, and post complications. There's some more post complications, transplant complications. Fistulas due to duodenal leak. You're doing an enteric anastomosis over there. Graft pancreatitis, pancreatic pseudocyst, pancreatic leak, hemorrhage. urological complications, and infections like bacterial, viral, or fungi. Okay, these are straight cut. You can take pictures over here. Now, 4-5 slides on islet cell transplantation. Whenever pancreatic, if your question comes at pancreatic transplantation, write at least 4-5 lines on islet transplantation. Okay, but if it comes at islet cell transplantation, here's your 5-mark questions, which here's the answers for you. See, the best, it's an alternative to pancreatic organ transplantation in type 1 diabetes is pancreatic islet cell transplantation. So everything is all type 1 diabetes. Okay, because it is not an operation at all, as I show you, it's just an injection, right? It is lesser immunogenic. Okay, not only we have entire big surgery has a lot of immunosuppression also, but this just as an injection. And healthy islet cells can be harvested even from a diseased pancreas. So the pancreas need not be of optimum condition if the islet cell is okay. So the the availability is that much more, isn't it? For any dead donor with a little bit bad pancreas, but the islet cell is perfectly fine. Alcoholic pancreatitis has happened, but the islet cell is very good. You can harvest it. So these are the advantages. So how do you take out the islet cells? It's obtained during a 6 to 8 hours long process of enzymatic degradation of the pancreas and extraction of beta cells. How do you do it? Islet cell preparations can be obtained after treating the organ with collagenase, digestion of the pancreas, followed by the use of this medium gradient called fecal-chondrite discontinuous gradient for the separation of isolated islets. So this fecal-chondrite discontinuous gradient, it helps in identifying and getting to the isolated islets. So first is collagenase, and second, to digest the pancreas. Basically, you're digesting the pancreas. The second is the fecal-chondrite discontinuous gradient to separate the pancreas from the entire digested thing that is coming, right? Islet isolation and yield. See, most centers with an active clinical islet transplant program obtain 300 to 600,000 islet equivalents. It's called IEQ per pancreas after purification. That is after that medium gradient you have put, which is about 50% of the islet tissue content. So, if a pancreas, to get to that gradient, to get how much percent of islets can have you excited, normally 50% that you can take out. Okay. Typically, when you're giving an islet cell transplantation, the patient requires 10,000 islet equivalents per kilogram of the body. So if it is a 60 kg body, it will require 600 islet cell equivalents. So normally to get to 600 islet cell equivalents, you would require 2 whole pancreas digestion. So 2 donor pancreas is required normally to get 1 transplant recipient, to 1 transplant recipient. Okay, so this value is important. 10,000 islet cell equivalents per kilogram of body weight. So if it's a 70 kg, 50 kg, you can work it out. Right? Okay. So what is the transplant procedure? The procedure is very simple. It does not take place in the operating room. It takes place in the radiological suite and involves percutaneous transhepatic placement under local anesthetic of a size 4G catheter into the main portal vein under fluoroscopic guidance or ultrasound guidance through a laparoscopic or a laparoscopic can also be used. But normally through a fluoroscopic guidance or ultrasound guidance, it happens. The portal vein pressure is checked. If normal, 8 to 10, a single preparation lot with a packed cell volume, it is 5 ml of purified islets is gently dispersed in approximately 105 milliliter of transplant medium. It's Mi-199 bioviticus. Okay, this medium which carries the portal cell with islet cell from the syringe to the portal vein of the recipient. Okay, from a suspended bag containing heparin with intermittent portal pressure monitoring. So this is the entire how you do it. Okay, I have a picture, I think. See, this is how the picture is. I've taken it from this Unan Arbas. So donor, you've taken out the pancreas, you've done collagenase, digested it, you put that concentration gradient, isolated islet cell, put it in a syringe. Okay, then under fluoroscopic guidance, you cannulate the portal vein. With the portal vein pressure, you measure 8 to 10 mm, and then you put it in. Okay, inside the portal vein, and it expands itself into the liver. Okay, once it is gone inside the liver, the islet cell will start giving insulin. So this is given over there into the liver. Okay, there are other sites also, which we'll discuss about it later. So this looks like a very simple procedure. This is a experimental procedure. It is we still don't have any kind of approval for it. It is obviously, you can understand the entire procedure has practically no morbidity. It's just an injection, isn't it? So, but there are some disadvantages. What are the disadvantages? Large number of islets required for one successful transplant. Often 2 donors per 1 recipient. These islet cells don't survive lifelong. Maybe they survive 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. Multiple times transplantation is required because transplanted islet cells die out. And the recipient's immune system attacks these cells, so lifelong immunosuppressives are also required. Don't think lifelong immunosuppressives is not required. So you can understand what is happening here. So the islet cell basically survival is poor. This is another superb chart which is taken from the same paper. So what happens in first is that there's a failed islet cell engraftment. So the islet cell fails to latch onto the liver. Okay, so use of alternate islet sites. It has been used, like I think it's used in brain. For males, it is put in testis. You know, all these things are there. Local therapy to increase vascularization, or if you require a lot of need for immunosuppressive therapy, mesenchymal stem cell studies have been done. These are all experimental. You're not even level 1 evidence is there. There's an immuno-isolating device can be used. Less toxic immunosuppressive regimen can be given. These are all immunosuppressive, you can give lifelong their complications. And of course, the scarce donor supply. So these are basically the iPSC and HESC is basically stem cell therapy that you do, okay, or xenoderived islet cell. So stem cell, islet cell that you can use from the stem cell, from the iPSC is induced pluripotent stem cell. HESC is embryonic stem cell. You use that to create pancreatic islet cell. Okay, these are all experimental right now, but this is the strategies. It can have a failed islet cell engraftment. The patient would require lifelong immunotherapy and of course scarcity. So these are what's given in the below is basically the experimental things which we use to counter these things, right? Okay. So I think in islet cell, you do this technique is called the Edmonton technique. I forgot to mention this. So this any other questions? And then the class is over.
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sir, you said we digest the pancreas by adding collagenases and then we extract the islet cells. So, but how is it not damaging the islet cells?
It normally doesn't damage.
Could we take it, sir?
No, you have to basically get to the islet cells, right?
Okay.
Collagenase will dissolve the pancreatic parenchyma. It will basically make it into a mashed potato. But the islet cell is also over there. So to purify that and filter out the islet cell, you use that gradient. This is the gradient. Foucault-Condré discontinuous gradient. You basically centrifuge it. Whatever you get after the collagenase, in that gradient you put and you centrifuge it. The islet cell comes out.
Okay.
Okay. But 2 pancreas per 1 recipient. That is the unfortunate part. We can't take out 100% of the islet present in that pancreas. You can understand it's like a mechanical technique. They can only take 50 of it. 50% yield is there. Because, as you rightly said, with this entire enzymatic and mechanical separation, 50% gets lost. Okay, so now we have an issue about ischemia times, right? We had this thing. Now, what you mean is this is for the last liver transplant class that I put. So the donor-warm ischemia time is defined as the interval from the withdrawal of life support to the initiation of cold organ preservation. So what happens is that when the transplant team reaches the hospital, then the initiation of withdrawal of life support happens, right? It has some parameters. After that parameters is there, the patient has brain death. Then the transplant team gets to gets to the do the operation, it takes out the organ. Okay, this is basically, it requires for liver 30 minutes. Okay, now you have to answer like this, sir. Normally we see that if the donor warm ischemia time is more than 30 minutes, then generally seen that some complications happen post transplant. Okay, now it's a very small window, 30 to 40 minutes. So some people, you can stop your answer that before, if it's more than 30 minutes, if some teams will not accept the liver. Okay, but then there's a V of 10 minutes extra and all these things happen. After withdrawal life support, it depends on how long the brainstem death occurs and everything. So that is the donor warm ischemia time starts from the withdrawal of life support to the initiation of cold organ preservation. Okay, when you put the entire explanted liver, you take it out and put it into that 4 degrees centigrade, whether static or dynamic, whatever you put, that from the donor ischemia time, it should be 30 minutes. The graft cold ischemia time, which is mainly the CIT, is defined from the interval from the initiation of donor in the cold storage stage. So once you put that donor warm ischemia time and within 30 minutes you put it into the cold solution, the graft cold ischemia time starts to the removal of the graft from the, when you take out the graft in the recipient table for the putting it inside. Now there is some people call something called a graft warm ischemia time. That is defined as the interval from the removal from cold storage to establishment of reperfusion of liver. Now some people call this graft cold ischemia time the GWIT a part of CIT. They say once you put it into the thing to when the revascularization has happened. Some people say no, when you take it out from the storage till your reperfusion has happened, that is the graft warm ischemia time. Both are right. And this you have to answer like that. Ideally, it should be the cold ischemia time should be less than 4 hours in some studies, but till 8 hours, it is shown that after 8 hours, if there's some changes that happens in post-transplant, complication can happen. But ideally, by 12 hours, you should do it. There is no cutoff for anything. You will not get it anywhere. Different people use different issues, and basically these are, as the country guidelines, it is very almost political, because it depends on how much donors are available. So there's a lot of external factors also, but you will answer like that. Ideally, it should have been done 4 hours, but sometimes after 8 hours, it is seen that some changes happen. Some studies have shown that, and you can do it up to 12 hours. Okay, below 4 hours, sometimes it's not possible. Only 15% of the transplant, I think it was an American study that I'm quoting, 15% of the total liver transplant actually managed to do it within 4 hours. Cold ischemia. Okay. Right. Any other questions?
So one more clarification.
Yo.
So not regarding this class. So the thing is, we have got our theory exams in 2 months. So, but there are a lot of classes are missing from the app. How long will it take for it to? Come to the app?
The classes has already been done. I think it's already been done. I think you'll get it in 1 or 2 days.
Okay, sir. So till this week, everything will be uploaded, no, sir?
You will be up to date. Yeah. I think it's already been done. Just check, because I haven't checked the app. Maybe by tomorrow you'll get it. I think we've added some around 15 classes more. Okay. When is your theory exam?
August 24, 25, 26, 27.
It's given.
Yes, sir.
This is what the June batch.
June session.
Okay. And what about the practical for these guys, the March people?
So that is not announced yet.
Okay. So it is fixed at 24th, 25th, 26th.
The recording has stopped.
Okay. I'll just tell Ramanuj, because Ramanuj is thinking of doing a theory paper